Hey everybody, this is Bob Cohen, and I just want to check to make sure you can all hear me and see the slides that are up. So if somebody wouldn't mind just throwing in the chat, that would be great. Thanks. All right, thank you, sir. Good deal. I think we're there. We'll wait another minute or two to get some more people in, and we'll get started. So while we're waiting, if you wouldn't mind, put in the chat if you have been on any of the previous sessions. This is the third session of a five-session workshop. So I'm just curious to know, and it doesn't matter if you haven't been on, you can catch up either by taking a look at the recorded versions of the workshops that have gone out so far. But also, it's pretty self-explanatory kinds of the things that we're doing. Um, so I see some people are on for the first time, and some people are looks like first time for many of us. So that's okay. But I will talk about the previous two workshops as we go along. So let's give it another, let's say 30 seconds or so, and then we can go from there. Yes, William, all of the recordings would be available if you have not gotten them in the past. I'll show you my email address. Just send me an email and I'll make sure that you get the recordings. They're also available online on the SCORE website, SCORE Cleveland website. So, and I think we've got a YouTube channel as well. So one way or another, we'll make sure that you get those. And I think I will get started. We've got mostly everybody on, and those that have not made it on yet will, I'm sure, get back to us pretty quickly. So, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about where we're at. We're going to talk about a marketing plan. This is the third session of a five-session workshop. Let's talk about SCORE for a few minutes, and then we'll move on from there. So we've got one of the largest networks of free volunteer small business mentors in the nation. If you haven't been on before, I've probably mentioned in the past, we've got some 10,000 volunteers around the country in some 240 chapters of SCORE. So it's a national organization, and we have access to literally every one of those 10,000 based on what our needs are and what the experience of those mentors that are out there. We primarily work with mentoring and business education. Our mission is to foster vibrant small business communities through mentoring and education. You all know that small business drives our national economy. About 50% of the entire economy is based on small business. So it's SCORE's mission to make sure that those businesses start and grow and become very vibrant in the communities that they are acting in. Also to have familial wealth. So if you can build a business and you've got the ability to pass it on to your children and those that follow you, that's building wealth, and that's great for the country as well as for you yourselves. So everything that we do in SCORE here is free, partly because the SBA, who is one of our sponsors as well as a partner, and also partners that we actually are able to raise funds from to keep our chapter up and running. So special thanks to those. So if you have an opportunity, I would recommend that you go ahead and take a picture of this QR code and go on and get a SCORE mentor. You'll see as we go along in this workshop and the previous ones and the next ones that follow, it's really great to have a mentor. And when I spoke in the very first session about starting a business, whether it's a SCORE mentor or someone else. It is so important to have somebody that you can talk to about your business. You should not have to go it alone. And so, whether it's a SCORE mentor, you've got other people in business that you can look up to and can work with you, it is very, very good to have somebody that you can bounce ideas off of. So, when you get to our website, there are several tabs across the top and over here. You can request a mentor very easily just by hitting that tab. You can look at the workshops that are out there. All the recorded workshops as well as the live workshops are there. There are some filters that you can filter out to make sure that you get the ones that you want and in the areas that you want. But you'll also have access to all of the workshops that are done nationally through SCORE. And SCORE Cleveland alone does about 150 workshops a year. So you can imagine that throughout all of SCORE, there are thousands and thousands of great workshops that are available for you for free on almost any subject matter that you can think of in your business. So let's just talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going and where we are right now in terms of the process roadmap. So the very first session we did was on startup basics. We explained what it took to be a good entrepreneur. We talked a little bit about understanding business. We talked about the various business types that are out there, how to start a business, making it legal, going, out to the various sources, IRS as well. And we talked about actually what types of businesses you might get into, whether it's a business that is already established or you're establishing from scratch, and several others. We also talked about nonprofits a little bit. Session 2 in business concepts, and session 3 is kind of going to derive some of the subject matter from that as well. Excuse me. So session 2 talked about business concept. We talked about articulating your business, understanding what it is you're doing, and being able to actually put together the beginnings of a business plan, and to look at your concept, whether you are, it's a go or no go decision about how well your concept is going to fit to what is needed out there. We always talk about having mentors to help you with your businesses. I talked about it in the very beginning. Don't need to say much more about that. And today we're going to talk about marketing. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, and I'll show you some of the handouts, we're actually looking at Anne's Nursery as a kind of a model of something that you can look at, just a business study that's been done in the past through SCORE on a small business. Is fictitious, but the idea here is that the way Anne put her business together is not a bad model for you to look at. But what I will say is it's very high level, just in terms of, we're not getting down into a lot of details in the weeds. There are other workshops that we'll do that can do some of that. And it's also, and in particular, the just to get this done in an hour's time on your lunch hour, we've had to simplify it to the point where some of it may be simplistic, but yet the concepts are concepts that you need to think about as you begin to build your marketing strategy for your business. And we'll use Anne as a sample. So Anne's Nursery is going to be primary to this. So you will receive the slides for this particular session, and in the slides are all of the links that you need for the first 3 sessions. So first of all, this is my information. I'm Bob Cohen, or Robert.Cohen at scorevolunteer.org. I'm a mentor and also a workshop presenter. So Anne's Nursery, the case study, is this link here. Legal forms of business, which I talked about, your vision statement, your small business readiness assessment if you want to do that, and some SWOT analysis information is here. Click on these links. All of the handouts are available to you. Second session, we talked about competitive data collection, and we talked about your business concept and an outline template. Again, simplified, but um, very good in terms of the concepts. Session 3, which is what we're going to be working on today, competitive comparison chart, marketing expense strategies, marketing message outline, pricing templates, and some other things as well. So the benefits you should derive, from the whole series, not just this one session, should be to help you develop your business plan. And there are all kinds of business plans out there. There's a one-page business plan. There's another business plan. There's templates available online through Score, where there's a 14, 15-page one, and it depends on what you need. And then there is the business model canvas. Those are all great. Those documents are available online at score.org/Cleveland, or even just score.org. Score.org will take you to the national website. And all these templates are available online, as well as directions on how to use them, and also very helpful presentations and workshops on how to use those plans. So this is going to take you through the decision-making process. Just because you've got a great idea doesn't mean it's going to make a great business. And that needs to be thought through very carefully, not only from, a personal perspective, but also a financial perspective. You need to be analytical on how you think about whether or not your business idea is something you need to move forward with, because it's going to take time and money to get it up and running and to do it properly. So think very carefully as to whether or not you believe, based on the data that you're looking at, whether or not your business can be successful. It gives you the core information that you need to complete a business plan for bankers and investors. And I mentioned this in the very first session, that if you're going to get funders of any kind, whether it's grantors for a nonprofit, or it is bankers, or several of the other funding agencies that may be in and around town. And by the way, funding is getting harder and more difficult to get daily as things change, both politically and financially in the country. So having a good, solid business plan, if you're looking for money, is going to be very, very important. And then you then have the ability that you've thought through all of the important things that you need to do to get your business started and up and running. So that is the benefits of the workshop, and certainly of a business plan. So our agenda looks something like this. We're going to talk a little bit about the homework that we've done, and those documents are available on that first 2 slides that I showed you, with the links in them. We're going to talk about competition, and I can't stress enough how important competition is. Last week, we began talking about understanding your competition, products and service descriptions, and all of these relate to Ann's Nursery in particular, pricing strategy, target markets and sales channels, marketing strategies, just a brief marketing message, just start the flow of your thought process, and some sales basics, and a little bit of homework to do before the next session. So far, that's where we're going. Feel free to drop questions into the chat. I'll try and save a few minutes at the end, more than a few minutes, so that I can answer as many of those as is possible, so that we can go from there. So I just wanted to review the homework a little bit. This may be a little bit tough to see, but again, these documents are available in the links that I showed you in the beginning of this. The idea of your business concept outline, again, very simplified, but also good information that you need to begin your thought process. What's your business idea? What is your personal background? We stressed last week that it's very important to have some understanding of the business you're going into, either through direct experience or in some other way that you have the ability to take your knowledge Bankers, the very first thing they're going to ask you is what's your background and how does it fit with the business idea that you have? Um, so that's important. Um, a profile of the industry. Last week we talked about the research and how to find it to get that industry profile. Again, this is all stuff that can go into your business plan, especially if you're borrowing money. Your target markets, which is going to be very important for your marketing plan. And we'll talk about target markets in a minute or two. Other key factors. We're going to talk about pricing strategy, but we want you to articulate what that's going to look like, features and benefits, and I'll talk about that in a few more minutes. But it's very important to understand features, and it's very important to understand benefits. It's very important for your marketing message to talk about the benefits that the features of your service or your product or your nonprofit have. So, size of your business, your profitability, and a marketing strategy, of course, is something that you need to put together. So let's talk a little bit about comparing your competition. And we will then go to Anne's nursery and talk about how she did it. But understanding what the difference between a feature and a benefit is really important. Now, think about a product, for instance, and a feature of, let's say, a washing machine, something you wash your clothes with. The features there are, let's say, the load capacity. How big of a load can you do? How quickly that load can get done. How many different cycles there are in, that particular washer dryer. For a computer, it might be, the speed of the a random access memory. It might be the size of the hard drive. It might be, the particular um, uh, um, you know operating system, things like that. Sorry for the word finding problem, but those are all features of those typical products. But it's the benefits that you want to talk to your customers about. So, benefit of having a large capacity in a washing machine is the very fact that you can take more clothes, gives you the ability to get your wash done and have maybe fewer cycles that you need to go through, taking more clothes, So those are all important benefits that make uh, somebody utilizing those machines make their lives better and easier and answer needs that they have when you find out about it. And when you're going into business, one thing you want to do is look at your business, what features and benefits are going to benefit the people that potentially are going to use your service or your product. So those are important and important to articulate in your marketing message. Again, I've oversimplified it, but we can talk about features and benefits all day long. We could do, 2 hours just on that. Same thing with pricing strategy. Your pricing strategy is extremely important. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides. And the size of your actual sales and revenue is going to be very important. Your marketing strategy, you want to look at you want to look at your competitors as well for features, benefits, and things like that. And when you do competitive comparisons, you really want to look at your competition and those things that make it important. I'm going to show you something. I don't know how often you utilize AI, but I did something in Chat GPT. Let me just get out of this for a second and go into. I just and this relates to Anne's nursery. I posed a very simple question to Chat GPT. And I said, I have a nursery that provides exotic plants for commercial nurseries, online sales as well. And what competitive data should I collect and be aware of? And this is what came back. Competitor profiling, names and locations, business models. Let's say if are they using are they wholesale, retail, online, and in some cases maybe nonprofits. what's the unique selling proposition. So those are things that you need to think about for yourself, not only as well for your competitors. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these things, but feel free to go to ChatGPT or Gemini or any of those other AI capabilities that are out there to help you to think through your messaging. And if you do, make sure that what you're looking at is accurate and honest. And those are things that you have to be very particularly careful about when you do this. But for something like this worked pretty well. So pricing strategy, and that's something I just talked about. Retail and wholesale prices, bulk discounts, tiered pricing, shipping costs and policies, and things like that. Those are all so important to understand. Online presence and e-commerce. So you want to study your competitors or in and around these things that I'm showing you here, but more particularly if you've got a business that is different than Ann's Nursery, and I suppose that 99.5% of us do, then let's look at things that target more particularly your competitors. Marketing strategies, what are they doing for advertising and content and blog posts, and what kind of promotionals are they doing, what kind of seasonal campaigns do they do. These are things that you want to know about your competitors, because very often your competitors mistakes, there are opportunities for you, or things that threaten their business are opportunities for you. And we will talk about and have talked about SWOT analysis as well. And one of the documents that you will get in the handouts is a SWOT analysis. So let me go back to the presentation and let's talk a little bit about what Ann's Nursery did. So this is a very overly simplified, but again, valuable tool. You're talking about my business all the way down here, your competitors, competitor 1, 2, and 3. And, so these are just a few things. If you look at what I pulled out of Chat GPT, you could easily add multiple categories for you to look at understanding your competitors. So do that. And you'll find that most of the handouts that I've given you in one way or another are likely to be Word documents or Excel documents that you can actually add to and change. You can add more categories, you can add more businesses. So these are pretty flexible. So now let me just show you a very easy way that Ann put these together for her nursery. Okay, so basically this is Ann's nursery. This is competitor A, B, and C. Now, again, I want to stress that this has been simplified to make this a 1-hour presentation, but this is what customers think about Ann's business compared to what they think about Ann's competition. Now, Ann put these together. So what I encourage you to do is don't look at this from an emotional perspective when you do it. Look at it from an analytical perspective. So Ann is saying that the features and benefits that she has is better than her competitors. She's rated herself 2 pluses versus a 0, which and the line I guess is going to be something that is just kind of average. 0 maybe a little bit less than average, and so on. And her pricing, she's actually gone out and done price comparison. And she's a little bit higher priced than competitor A, but on the same par, and I'm going to talk about pricing strategy, as competitor B and C. Product mix, okay, and if you read Ann's Nursery, the business plan, you'll see that she deals with exotic plants of many kinds that are out there. Are, in her competitors that she's looked at, you'll see when I talk about the various sales channels, she's looking at working with local nurseries, working online, working with gardeners, and working with sales reps basically on a national basis. So those are her 4 channels that she's working with. So her product mix, and look at her marketing strategy. She thinks she's pretty good, but competitor B is pretty good, and competitor C is on par with her. Her business model is pretty level with the rest of her competitors. Maybe competitor C is a little bit different, but again, we're only looking at one, two, three, four, five different strategies that she does against um, her competitors. I encourage you to look much, much deeper at your competitors as well. It's going to be very helpful. So your description in your products and services, and there is a product and handout coming up that I'll show you. What are your special benefits? Okay, what are your unique features? So in Anne's case, one of her benefits is that she actually guarantees that her plant material will live a certain period of time. One of her unique features are the instructions on the care of her plant material and so on. Her limits and liabilities. I mean, you can think through a lot of those, but one of the limits and liabilities is that guarantee that the plant material will live a certain time, because if it doesn't and she gives you your money back, that's a liability on her. Products and delivery, production and delivery, and your suppliers, intellectual property, special permits that you have. These are all things that you should be thinking about in your own businesses. And these, special benefits. I talked about, a benefit again, thinking about it from a computer perspective. If you've got a faster memory, then by all means, you have the ability to get to subject matter and things like that much quicker. You have a bigger hard drive, you can store more material. That's all things that help show the value of your product and or service. And if you are out there thinking about what it is that is required, what are the pain points of the people that you want to sell to, those could become features or benefits, understanding what the pain points are and what your solutions are for them. So I'm going to go to Anne's little or our handout. And again, you can go back in here and add all kinds of titles on this and do much deeper dives onto features and benefits and your products and services and things like that. So I'm going to show you I'm not going to show you what Anne did here, but she talks about it later on. I will. Products and services, her ideas, her special benefits, unique features, all those things that I just mentioned. Let's talk about pricing strategy for a little bit. Again, I'm moving quickly in order to get this done in an hour's time. And what I will tell you is that there are more workshops available in particular on marketing and much more direct on, so there's a marketing basics that are out there, and then other things on building websites and social media and things like that through Google and Google Analytics. This is just the very tip of that iceberg, and it goes much, much deeper. But I want to talk about, understanding your competitors' pricing, and then look at a couple different pricing strategies. So when you think about a pricing strategy, there are a couple things to think about. Number one, what is the market right now doing when you look at your competitors? What are their strategies and how do you fit into that? Are you a higher price provider, or are you a lower price provider, or are you right in the middle of where your customers are pricing themselves? And if you're the high price provider, what is it that you do that's more valuable than what your competitor does for you to get a higher price? And there's nothing wrong with positioning yourself to be the high price competitor or right in there at the top of those pricing ladders. And so, but you do need to be able to, people will buy value, but you got to be able to prove that value. The other thing you don't want to do is sell on pricing when you're the lowest price provider, unless you are prepared to become commoditized, just like the gas companies and the electric companies. When you're looking for a supplier for gas or electric for your home, you're going to go to the cheapest possible place you can, because there's nothing different per se between the companies that are out there other than their pricing. So you don't want to get into that position either, unless there's some benefit for you by being the low price provider. So when you're thinking about pricing, what value added premiums do you have? And then you got to think about your channels, your sales channels, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Are you working with consumers? Are you a dealer? Are you working business to business? And are you wholesale? Are you retail? Those are all going to drive how you price your products and or your services. So other options there are, could you mark up costs? So the one thing that you need to make sure that you're doing is not pricing yourself so low that there is no that there is no profit for you, to make sure that you're considering your labor as well as other labor. Startup businesses tend to not consider the owner as part of the labor market that is needed in order to run the business. So those are important things to consider when you work this out. Next week, we'll talk about financial planning and putting together a financial plan. So some of that will come into play in the next session. Other things, bundling, you think about a travel agency for a moment, and you might be able to go find online a travel agency that's going to bundle all your travel needs together. So that means, airfare, transfers, hotel, entertainment, all bundled in one package. And in some cases, they're able to price those in such a way that if you were to break those bundles apart, you couldn't necessarily, as a consumer, do that much better. But also, then there's all the work that you need to do to put that together. So, bundling is another possibility to think about. We need to understand, who your final target is. If you're looking at business to business, or you're looking at consumers, or if you are a manufacturer and you're looking at wholesaling your products and things like that, you need to understand that. And then, are there promotions that you can use to get trial and so on? So those are things that you want to. Your initial price, I mentioned cost of materials and service plus profit. Understanding what your competitor is doing. Do you need to match that price? Can you go higher? Do you need to be a little bit lower? You can adjust your prices. It's very difficult to start high and go low. It's a little easier to start a little bit lower and adjust your prices up. You've got to be careful how you do this. So you might want to look at targeting. Now, one and sampling. Depending on the product, of course. I work with clients that have products, for instance, like skincare products. There are ways that you can, look to see, number one, whether or not consumers are interested in your product. You can get yourself an inexpensive booth at a farmer's market, for instance, and try your pricing strategy and see how that works out. See if you're too low, too high, but also obviously you want to make sure that you have the ability to move your price up or down. I mentioned being the low cost provider and getting commoditized. That might happen when you set your price too low. Not only does it disrupt the marketplace, but it could cause a price war. I remember years ago in grocery stores when all the soda companies, Coke, Pepsi, and all those, they priced themselves so low that they were actually priced lower than they can actually make a profit at. But they had a price war going on, and it was, partly a matter of getting those brands out there. And sometimes that's the best way to do it. But it was also a matter of getting shelf space and other things that are out there. So pricing and price wars, you've got to be careful, very careful, not to get yourself into those situations. So a pricing plan strategy, there's a handout there, very easy to do. Just briefly describe your pricing strategy, but don't base it alone just on what you think you're doing. Understand that marketplace, understand your competitors before you begin to start thinking that through. So let's talk about some channels, because then we're going to get back to Anne and talk about the channels that she saw in terms of her best place to target for sales. So a channel is, as it says there, the path of goods and services and information to the customer. So these are just a few. There's so many more. Business to business, and that's, many service businesses are business to business. you're going to market and target differently than if you are a retailer working with an end user customer, which would be B2C or business to consumer. Supply chains, so distributors that are going to retailers. That's a totally different way to work. Internet direct to the consumer, and there's no reason why you can't be direct to the consumer in some cases, business to business in some cases, internet for some things, e-commerce for some things, as well as potentially retail outlets and store and brick and mortar. And then various kinds of associate networks that might be, bringing in contractors to actually sell, or working with partnerships to actually sell your goods or services. So those are just a few of the possible channels, and I'm going to get more specific in a minute on what Anne did with her channels and how she did how she figured out where to go with her channels. So when you're thinking about your channel or your channel position and anything having to do with marketing and sales, the most important thing that you can think about is your target. And this says profile here, but I'm talking about a major target audience. And then getting down into the weeds in terms of demographics. So key demographics could be age, it could be income level, it could be family size, it could be race, it could be um, almost anything in terms of population. And we talked about where to get some of the demographic information that you might use to formulate your business and to formulate your marketing. One great one is the Census Bureau. And if you go to the handouts that were given out in session 2, I think there's a lot of links to several of the places you can do research to understand your demographics. Gender's another one. Geographic. Are you selling in a target market that's in a small community area? It's easy to get demographics. It's easy to figure out who they are and where they are and how to get to them. And so, you got to think about that. Buying habits and buying behaviors are very important, particularly if you're doing work with social media and understanding where people hang out to get information and how to target your social media, but also how to target any kinds of advertising you're doing. And that might be through social media, it might be, and I'll show you some other things going through. And then understanding your market size. Bob Fedor last week talked about, are you in a growing or a declining market? Okay, if you're in a declining market, unless you're coming up with unique ideas within that declining market that's actually going to help you grow that market, then you might want to reconsider where you are. And you need to look at where you are in your market. If it's a growing market, how much has it been penetrated already by people doing business or by your competitors? You need to know those things. The bank's going to want to know those things. And in fact, the bank will know those things because if you are submitting financial documents to them on a particular business, and we talked about NAICS codes last week, based on who you are, where you are, and how your industry is classified, bankers have that information through an instrument called Risk Management Association, or RMA, which is, by the way, available to you in the library. You can look at RMA and look at your business and understand what other businesses that are in your industry classifications are doing. We can get into that at another time, or you can work with a mentor on doing that. So you need to understand that. Let's take a look at what understanding and identifying your target markets. And again, you can look at multiple markets. This is 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'll show you how Anne articulated those. Okay, channel position. So the channels, you'll see in a minute what hers are, and this is a great reason to do a study like this, because once you understand what hers are, you'll understand what you might need to do as well. And you can add things here. You can add demographics. You know, these are just major headings. You can add other headings down the line on here. Again, these are pretty flexible tools that you can utilize. Here's what Ann did. So this is her market research. And let's first talk about her target markets. So Anne, being a nursery and being a producer only of plants, sees that she can sell to local nurseries. And if you hadn't read the study, you'll find out that she's near Philadelphia in the Pennsylvania suburbs. And there are 200 or so local nurseries in her target area. She was able to find that out pretty easily. You can do the same thing with your competitors, find out, or I'm sorry, with your potential customers, find out how many are in and around. It's a little bit more difficult when you are business to consumer than being business to business. And you can see selling and is a business, selling to other businesses, that's business to business. Then she's looking at selling to distant nurseries. And she is doing that primarily through setting up a website that she will then advertise to other distant nurseries. She has figured out how many there are in and around the country, or at least close enough to give her an idea of what her penetration could be for that. And then local gardener is another one that she put on as a possible target market. And you know, so how is she going to sell to the consumers? She might do that also on the internet. And so, and then retail and consumer for internet gardeners. So let's just go through channel position. So, you know, this is a producer, a retailer. This is local nurseries, also producer, retailers for the distant nursery, consumer, and then retail and consumer in that channel as well. Key demographics, you know, you can go into much deeper key demographics, but just to give you an idea, she's really looking at it from what the potential sales are for her in terms of a local nursery. And she knows that she can do somewhere up to around $30 million in sales locally, or they do that. And she's looking at, so the local nurseries do somewhere around $30 million. She's looking at what her market share of that is based on how much she can penetrate. And so you can see out of that 30 million, she's looking at potentially 5% share, 200 gardeners times 50K per gardener. That's how she figured it out. And this is done the same way with the distant nursery and the local gardeners and so on. Now, the other thing that she's going to look at is going to be, and I'll show you in a minute, you know, how good these particular channels are. Is there any channel conflict in them? And there is in what she's got laid out here. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But she's also, just so you can see, she's also looked at what her market share could be in these. Obtaining market share is a little bit more difficult. It takes a lot of financial know-how to get that done, but it's not impossible. And I think, you know, there are areas where there's data available that you can start looking at to figure out what potential penetration and market share you could get out of these. So her target markets, she's gone back, she's got some general description of what her target markets are, her channel position, the demographics and buying habits of those. And it's, you know, these are things that you need to do and understand the key needs that your targets have versus the ability for your services or your products to fulfill those needs. If there is no need for your product out there, then you will not be successful. And people, when they buy, whether it's buying for a large company or a consumer buying something from themselves, they won't buy if they don't need it. They won't buy if they don't trust you, and they won't buy if they can't afford it. So those are three things to think about. As simple as they are, Knowing and trusting is really important. Having a need for the product obviously is very important. So you need to understand what your consumer or your business targets needs are for what you're selling, and understanding cost versus profit, and then sales side and estimate of your potential market penetration, which is what Ann did here. Feel free to work with a mentor in SCORE or somebody that has the ability to help you do the research to find those things out. So let's talk a little bit about comparing some of the markets that she's got, and to make sure that what she has is potentially decent in the way of her, the way she wants to compare her market and look at the channels again that she's in. So does what she sells fill a target market need? I can't talk about how important it is to really understand. Sometimes you got to go right to the customer and ask them directly. Do you, if I were to do this, would you, have a need? Or you might do some kind of a focus group, or you might look at other research that's done. You might also go to AI and see, and there's several other data sources out there that are available for you to look at to see what those needs are. And if you're not fulfilling a need, if there aren't pain points out there that you can fix, then you may not have the right business going forward. So, you need to consider, is there profit in it? Can you get more sales out of it? Minimum channel conflict. And let me just look ahead for a second. Yeah, I'm going to show it here on the next one. Um, we'll talk about channel conflict. And again, very simplistic, but there is some channel conflict here. Um, Favorable competitive environment. Okay, that means not only from a customer perspective, but as well from a government perspective. What possible threats are there to your competitive environment? You know, is there a big elephant there that you can't beat, or is there a big elephant there that you could chew pieces off of and actually give them a run for their money, or maybe they won't even realize that you're out there doing this? And does the vision fit your skills that you have? And we talked about that at the very beginning of this, and Bob Fedor discussed that in detail last week. So let me just see how we're doing on time. I've got about 10 minutes to 1. I should be able to get through this pretty quickly. So again, this is the handout. You can adjust the top. You can put more targets in there. You can put more channels in there if you want. But these are her channels or her target audience that she's working with, local nurseries, and she just went back and did the same thing. She evaluated how she looked in this particular target market, and she thinks that she has some better things to offer to local nurseries than most of her competitors. And if you go back and look at her products and how she was planning to market it, you'll see she's probably right. Here's important: does this fit what she does? So if you read the actual description before you get to her business plan, you'll see that she's got, I don't know, 100 acres or so that she grows on, that she actually owns, that is part of her family, and that she has figured out a way to grow those, and that she also has contact with the local nurseries. She's a PhD horticulturalist, so she's got some pretty good qualifying background. Distant nurseries, while it is not necessarily the most profitable target for her, it's not horrible. She's not going to lose money here. Her sales competitiveness is not bad. Her channel conflict is not bad. And her competition, maybe she's not as competitive as she could be, but, in some way or another, on a kind of a minimal basis, that this does fit her. It's worth the effort for her to go forward with this. But look at this local gardener. Okay. Yeah, they need her product. Okay. Yeah, it's profitable. But she's got competition in the sales area, and she's got a channel conflict. And if you read the study, you'll find out that her channel conflict is with the local nurseries. If she sells to local gardeners and she's setting up a direct competitive situation with the people that are going to supply her the most amount of money and be her best customers, the local nursery. So, again, on a very, very simplistic basis, there is a target market or channel competitiveness that is a conflict for her. So now we've got this. Let's just talk a little bit about thinking through your pricing and more particularly a message. So what you want to be able to do once you get to a point where you understand all of those things to a point that we've just talked about, you want to craft a message. And your message, again, this one's overly simplified, but it gives you some pretty good content ideas. Your message needs to be how you're going to brand yourself, how you are going to talk to consumers, to whomever you are selling to if it's a nonprofit, you're going to be talking to new volunteers, you're going to be talking to other support, you're going to be talking to funders, and your message needs to have some sort of a central idea that can be utilized for all of those things, and even particularly your branding strategy. So the message is, in her particular case, this fulfills the target market: quality, price, availability, dependability, and it clearly defines the unique features you'll see in a second that she can talk about and can be consistently communicated in all material and media. So you will get this. It's one of your handouts. Actually, you'll get that, and that is one of your handouts. Ann's Nursery is the name of the business, offers discerning growers, that's her customers, and gardeners. That's her target market. High quality ornamental trees and shrubs and vines, that's her product, backed by well-known horticulturalist Dr. Ann Murphy, a 1-year money back guarantee to grow and extend plant care. That's one of her unique features. Again, simplified for time purposes, but this is the way that you begin to develop your own message. And if you could do it in an hour, like we've done it here, it's great. It should take you more like days and going back and forth to get this to a point where you feel very comfortable about it. And your business plan should be semi-organized and well thought out to make this a reality. I'm just going to talk about some methods and tools very quickly. I don't need to spend a lot of time here. Some of this is old school, some of it's not, and you need to discover what ways work best for your customers. And remember, I talked about buying habits and personal habits and psychological habits and things like that. That's going to determine where people are hanging out. I did want to show you one thing in terms of some of the media and channel tactics that are out there. And now I'm talking about marketing channels as opposed to sales channels. These are 4 basic channels: paid, earned, shared, owned. And I'm just going to go through. And by the way, there is a workshop coming up called Marketing Basics that gets into this in much more detail. I'll be doing that. I think it's next month. If you get a chance, go online and look at it and join us. Advertising. Now, this could be digital. It could be print. It could be direct mail. It could also be email marketing and things like that. So think about those things places where your customers get their information and where you can reach those. I can't say enough about trade shows and trade associations in terms of your building your branding and your marketing. So that's paid. And then there is owned. That's content that you own. That's your website. That's email marketing that I mentioned up above as well. You own the content on that as well. You can advertise through it. There are multiple channels, sometimes with one particular channel that you can tap into. Webinars, workshops, podcasts. Interestingly enough, you all are on this workshop that we're doing. The top of our sales pipeline, and when I say sales, I actually mean the clients that come to us and ask us for mentoring, is because of these workshops. So, by putting on these workshops and by enticing you to come to us for mentoring help, that's how we help to fill our pipeline. Anyway, so those are ways to look at. I can't stress how important videos are, and other media that is that people can get in the middle of with you. So shared media is basically things that you can do in terms of Instagram and Twitter, LinkedIn, all of the social media in particular, that's shared. Okay. And then partnerships, those are places where you can actually partner with them on any of those target, any of these channels that are out here. And then the last one is working with influencers. I might say that working in um, uh, I'm sorry, in PR, for instance, um, and or with partnerships and tie-ins and things like that. A lot of this is free. When you're working with business with influencers, some of it is not free, some of it is free. If you are working heavily in targeting PR outlets and things like that, a lot of that is actually free. You get yourself in some way on the news. Think about kicking it with Kenny with some of these small businesses. That's free advertising. That's PR, and there's all kinds of strategies in and around that. So I want to move on real quick. Expenses. You need to just start thinking about one-time costs, what it's going to cost to go into the channels that we've just talked about, what your marketing message is going to be, and how you are going to get that out. And there are costs on all of it. If you're bootstrapping your business, then you got to look at the lowest cost possibilities that are out there. There are some free channels. That's why social media has been so popular. Problem with social media, it's building a following, getting people to look at what you are putting out. There's all kinds of marketing strategies around doing that. Look for more workshops and webinars from SCORE on how to do some of that. Come to my marketing basics workshop and take a look at that as well. Let's move on and let's look at some expenses, one-time expense, monthly or annual expenses. This again is very simplified. This is what Ann did. Okay, she projected how much it's going to cost her. She's got to put together some samples to take to the retailers. She's got to put together some displays for national gardeners and things like that. And then she's got to pay money for website and update and all that. Again, overly simplified, but gives you an idea. There is a marketing budget template that you can get from our materials. There's a link to that, I think, in material I'm handing out. And then, you can take a look at, when you get a chance, her outline, and you'll see business idea, her product and servicing offer, her pricing strategy, her competitive comparison. And by the way, there is an Ann's Nursery um, um, business plan that you can look at and take a look at what was written. We took that study and actually wrote a business plan for you to look at. And while it may not be your business, it'll give you a great idea on how to deal with it in terms of your own business. So let's review for a moment. I've got 1 minute to one. We talked about competition, how important that is, and I can't stress that enough. We talked about services and products, pricing strategy, your target markets and some channels, and your marketing strategies, messages, business structure a little bit, sales basics, and some homework that I gave you as well. Let's go on to the next slide. The next session is actually going to be working on a financial template. I think we're using Ann's again as an example If you've got some skills at all in Excel, this will be very helpful. If you don't, you can learn them. Most of the templates that they will work with actually have formulas built in, and you drop numbers into them, and it'll do some of your figuring for you. And then the very last session, funding options, where to go to funding, what types of funding are available out there. It's not just bank loans, and it's not just um, getting grants and things like that. There's all kinds of stuff. Dan Toll will be presenting that, and he's got some great background. Make sure you get a mentor if you can. Um, do your target market research. Look at all those handouts. There's about 7 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that you can do. They're very simple, but they're very helpful. Okay, finish drafting your business plan, feasibility study. Bring a calculator to your next session, and I think that's it. There's some other resources online. There is a simple steps workbook. There's a startup roadmap guide to starting your business in Ohio, which is more through ohio.gov and actually how to do that. And then there's a business model canvas. So it's pretty complete in terms of the material that are available to you. So I'm going to look at and stay on as long as you like. I'll try and get through as many as I can to see um, what we've got. Will be, yes. So handouts are available in what I just passed out or what I will pass out. I think recordings will be out there. I don't see anything that in the way of any major questions, although it says I got 32. So let me just quickly go to the bottom and work backwards. Handouts, yes. What was the question for Chat GPT again? I can show you that, what I did. And you know what? Other things to look at, SCORE, as well as many other organizations, are deeply involved now with AI, and there are many, many workshops out there. And the idea is to really understand how to prompt these AI work applications. And you can you can start with something like I did, very simple. I have a nursery, okay? So I have a whatever that business is that provides blah, 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 exotic plants in this case, for commercial nurseries. That would be your target audience, you know. So, I work with architects, I work with who knows what, real estate, or, um, online sales as well. This says, what competitive data should I collect or be aware of, and be aware of? And then this came back. Now, you could go back and ask additional questions on any one of these things, or a general additional question that'll help dive deeper into it. But I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that the material you get is relevant and I don't know if honest is the right thing, but on target, relevant, and good and solid information. You could easily be led astray if you get information that is not solid. Let's see what other questions, if any, I have. Um, Actually, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and take a quick look back at the chat. I got 2 in the Q&A. If you want to serve both local and international business customers, would your marketing message be essentially the same for both groups or noticeably different and specialized? Well, I think that this is a very nuanced question, and I think you need to look at the solution in a very nuanced way. I think it's important for you to do a lot of research on your targets and see how they are the same and how they're different, and then decide how to nuance your message. You've got, if you're going international, for instance, various other legal issues to worry about, various other cultural issues to worry about. So hard to say whether or not your message would be the same or different. I would imagine depends on your product and those things that I just mentioned. So I told you about the question from ChatGPT again. Let's see if there's anything else in the Q&A. And are we able to access those handouts? Yes. What was the question? Got that. Okay. I think Yeah, I think that I pretty much covered those. So unless there is nothing else, we can call it a day. I would encourage you to come to the next session, which I believe is a week from today. I'm not 100% certain, but you should probably have received, if you're on our mailing list, you got a mailing for this, you should see it for the next session as well. So I appreciate everybody having come today. I appreciate those that came back from the past sessions, and I look forward to working with you. Don't forget to find yourself a good SCORE mentor. Thanks, everybody. Take care.